Welcome in, and thanks so much for joining me. From time to time, I like to focus on tips and tricks for helping our meditation practice along, especially when we are hitting a bottleneck or some kind of a struggle in our practice. And I would say if we're practicing, meaning we have some kind of a formal everyday practice, and of course we're trying to integrate that into our life, we are going to hit bottlenecks. So hitting a bottleneck is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means you're practicing. So we could feel some kind of joy in a bottleneck and a struggle in our practice because it means we're working on it. But anyways, I want to go into this idea of control, how it affects our meditation practice, how it can create its own, bottleneck or sticking point in our growth in our meditation, and also how it just doesn't work so well if we're trying to open to deeper dharmic or Buddhist principles in meditation. So, of course, control makes its way into all aspects of our life, and control itself, I guess you could say, isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes we need to mitigate an issue. We need to control a certain situation so it doesn't, get out of control or harm ourselves and others in a certain way. And as a quick fix, it works in certain situations. But I think here I'm not so much talking about the act of control. Like, for instance, if there's a wildfire and we need to control it by, burning and create, strategic burning and creating certain blocks so the fire doesn't spread further. Sometimes we have to do that. That's, control is not bad in that particular situation, controlling a fire or something like that. I think here I'm more talking about the attitude of control, the perpetual controller, right? And, getting labeled as a controlling person is, it's not a good look, right? Like, I think most of us would be upset if someone labeled us a controlling person. So, we can also open up this idea of control as how we're seeking to mitigate certain emotional problems in our meditation practice. Of course, it applies to relationships and relational problems. I think when someone gets labeled as a controlling person, often it's because they're trying to control their partner. And I think we would all agree that that's not a great thing. That's not going to lead to a healthy friendship or romantic relationship or marriage. But anyways, the kind of control I'm talking about here is that constant seeking of solution, that constant seeking of, when there's an uncomfort, when there's discomfort or something not going the way we want it, we seek a solution. We get stressed because there's not a solution. We compound the suffering we're experiencing from whatever discomfort is going on with the fear and anxiety of, how do I get rid of this as quickly as possible? I've discovered this does not work in meditation, right? Because meditation is mainly a practice of discovering the mind, discovering, what is the nature of mind, what is blocking our greater contentment, ease, peace in the mind. And then, of course, what's blocking our pro-social or our conduct that can be more compassionate, open, and caring with ourselves and others. And so just as we can see, like, control doesn't work so well relationally with others, it's not going to work so well in relationship to how we treat our own thoughts and emotions. So if in meditation we're trying to control our thinking or thoughts, I found that to be pretty, not only dysfunctional for myself, but also just not very useful because, as one quote goes from a well-known Tibetan Buddhist teacher named Nusho Ken Rinpoche, he said, trying to stop our thoughts in meditation is like trying to stop a waterfall. If you're watching someone with their hands up trying to stop a waterfall, you would think either that person's a little off or perhaps they're ill-informed, or misinformed about what to do in that particular situation. And so a similar thing applies to our meditation, where we don't need to stop the thinking mind. We just need to become aware of it, right? We need to recognize it as thinking, as thoughts, and allow things to arise and fall. And of course, that's easier said than done. But when we bring that in as our attitude for practice, it does change how we approach thinking or thoughts within our meditation. Actually, from the traditions I practice in the Himalayan Buddhist traditions, generally thoughts aren't really a problem. Thinking is a little bit different, because thinking is the process of ruminating on a stream of thoughts. And that usually means we've lost awareness, and we need to, through mindfulness, we need to re-recognize or connect to awareness again, or this aware quality of the mind. And that's usually what we define as meditation, is fostering some element of awareness. And so, of course, thinking needs to be recognized, but we don't need to demonize it. We don't need to control it. Actually, if we become aware, thinking remedies itself, right? We can just allow the waterfall of thoughts to flow, and we're aware of thoughts flowing. So that's not a problem. But of course, when we hit other kinds of issues in our practice, when we're struggling or fighting with a particular issue, we might try to control it. And as I already said, this kind of breaks out, this expands into all areas of our life. So, inevitably we're going to have to look at other areas of our life, be it with our emotions, thoughts, other people, that we might apply a little too much control. And from what I've seen, control is really a mechanism that happens based on fear. We can see this in the world. When governments put more and more controls or rules on people, it's because they're afraid of something. They're afraid that people are going to have too much power or ability to, not follow whatever the government or particular situation wants. Now, I'm not going to comment on any particular government or anything, but we can just see, why do people exert control on others? It's because they're afraid. They're afraid to lose something, or they're afraid of the power of someone else or a group of people or their own countrymen and women. So we can also see, why would we exert control over our emotions and thoughts? It's because we're afraid of them. So this is one big part of our Dharma practice that's really important. Thoughts are just thoughts, Emotions, although they can be, of course, pleasurable, but they can also be very painful. We need to start to work with them as friends. We need to start to learn how to befriend them, as opposed to turn them into enemies. And for this particular issue, I highly recommend what's called handshaking practice. And this comes from my Buddhist teacher, Sonim Rinpoche. And you can find, all kinds of stuff from him online. And it's really an excellent practice. It's a somatic awareness practice where we drop into the feeling world, be it a physical sensation, emotion, or more like energetic sensation, something more subtle. And we feel and we allow and we train in that. That's not, for most of us, that does not come easy, but we train in letting be and allowing with awareness. That's why it's a meditation practice. The awareness is there, and we're feeling and being in the body. So you can Google Sonim Rinpoche and find all kinds of content on that. I also have guided meditations on my website on handshaking practice. But that's just one example of how I recommend working with emotions and sensations and things arising in the body that we can tend to constrict and control. Of course, open questions and more inquiry work can really help when we're struggling with control of our emotions or memories or thoughts. I want to, before I say this, I do want to say I've found a certain amount of somatic or body-based awareness practices to be kind of indispensable. Because if we only use inquiry work and we tend to be, a very analytical person already, we're only strengthening what is already strong within us. So it's good to start to balance with some somatic or body-based practice. But with that said, with any kind of inquiry work, we're trying to ask more open-ended questions about what we are trying to control, right? For instance, if we hit a little snag financially, or we hit a certain snag in a relationship, instead of going to our ruminating thoughts and catastrophizing, we can start to ask open questions around our experience of it. Here, we're not even looking for a solution necessarily right away. We're just looking for more prompts or open questions to start to decatastrophize our relationship to a problem that's arisen, and to open up to its reality and being with it, right? So I can't tell you what those specific questions are going to be for you. For me, they are often first just taking a few steps back, because I find when I get overwhelmed or stressed about a problem that's arising in my life, I'm already 4 steps ahead that hasn't even happened. So the first step is just bringing our presence into nowness. What is happening now? Usually what's happening now is actually body activation, emotions, sensations, sometimes like stress and overwhelm. Our breathing gets quicker. We feel a little pressure in our chest. So we can relate to that through somatic practices. We can also open up questions and inquiries around what's arising now. For instance, for me, a healthy prompt is often, can I allow this? Can I be with this? Is this as bad as it seems? When we come back from, this 4th, 5th step out that hasn't even happened yet, it's just a thought, just coming back to nowness. Can I be with what's here? Is it now? Is it as bad as it seems in my catastrophizing thoughts and mind? So these kinds of things help me just, not only to bring myself back into nowness, but also to just come to a fresher reality of like what's actually happening here versus, as I said, all of the kind of rumination and catastrophizing we can spin into. So coming back to this idea of control, for me, those kinds of practices of inquiry or body-based somatic awareness practices, they're not to control it. They're actually to understand it. They're actually to befriend and understand. Because how can we understand something we're not willing to relate with? Right? When we're trying to exert control, actually it's automatically saying, I'm not willing to relate with this. So when we stop or we take a moment to say, hey, what if I don't try to control this right away? It opens up this question of, maybe this isn't as, unworkable as it feels, but it also starts to open up friendship and compassion. So this is the last thing I'll leave us with, is that all of these approaches need to be encompassed in a compassionate attitude. And this compassionate attitude includes both ourselves and others, if we can. And it includes that, life is going to have ups and downs. And these are natural. It doesn't mean we're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean we're defective or deficient or lesser than others. It means that we're human. So how can we soften towards our humanity? How can we soften towards the humanity of others? And in this case, how can we soften around an experience that's arising, a pain point that we want to control? In a way, how can we even soften around that part of ourselves that wants to control? That's actually been quite helpful for me, just realizing, this is me trying to help. This is some aspect of myself that thinks control is useful and trying to help. And then I can soften or be compassionate even towards that behavior, right? So I hope this was helpful. Please comment if you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate your feedback. The more you can say, the better. Just, how you're relating to this content. Is it helping? Is it not? It helps me to gauge what to offer you here. And if you're listening on Spotify or some other podcast platform, feel free to reach out to me at scotttusa.com. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And take care. I hope you can implement some of this. I hope it's going to be supportive for you. All right. Have a good one.